This is the Palin Update on SaraNet Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla.
Well, America, it is time that we drain the jacuzzi and we throw the bums out with the bathwater.
Sarah Palin rocks the House at CPAC, wowing an overflow crowd in Washington, D.C., and receiving several standing ovations, leaving little doubt that the Mama Grizzly is still the top draw among conservatives. We'll take a look back at Palin's CPAC starring role. We've heard from Gingrich, Santorum, Buckman, and Carger. Today, another GOP hopeful joins us as our presidential series continues. And there's plenty more, including Palin's thoughts on the possibility of a brokered convention, her defense of a liberal professor, and her admission that she, too, has Lynn sanity. Plus, we look ahead at Grizzly Fest's next big day, with Winterfest coming up soon, and Sarah Pack calls out some flat-out lies from a major cable channel. First, our interview. And as the Republican race for the White House rolls on, candidates continue to make their cases to the voters. Today, a man with quite a following is here. Congressman Ron Paul of Texas joining us here on the Palin Update. Dr. Paul, welcome to SaraNet Radio.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Sir, I know Governor Palin has come to your defense of late. She has said you're the only one doing something about reining in government growth. She also has warned the establishment GOP to not marginalize your supporters or your candidacy. What did you make of the governor's remarks, and do you think Republicans are listening?
Well, I was delighted to hear the remarks. I hope the Republicans are listening, but I'm afraid they probably aren't because, you know, there's too much conventional wisdom, too much status quo. Nobody wants to rock the boat. And so far, the others, as Governor Palin has pointed out, they're not proposing any cuts. You know, when they talk about cuts, they're talking about cuts in the proposed increases, so it's all a fiction. Of course, I'm serious about it, and they know that because that's the way I voted. I'd cut $1 trillion out of the budget in order to try to save this economy. Otherwise, we're going to bankrupt ourselves to the point where the dollar is going to be destroyed. So I was delighted to hear her defending my position on the cutting the spending and the need for it.
Now, you weren't at CPAC this year, but plenty of your supporters were. Nothing new there. They're everywhere, and they are very often younger voters. You have a huge presence on college campuses. Tell us, Dr. Paul, how does the oldest candidate in the race, a Christian Republican white man, make such a cool candidate for young voters?
Young ideas, and people love their independence and they love their freedom. It's a natural tendency to be, independent-minded, whether you look at a 2-year-old or a 16-year-old teenager. And I think we have to, what happens is, we are all so conditioned to conform and be part of the group and not to be independent-minded. And when the young people hear that you can be independent-minded and it's a thriving, prosperous economy and you have a different outlook on life, you have a different role for government, all of a sudden it catches their attention. But I think the real reason that I'm getting their attention more so than even 4 years ago is the fact that there's such a sharp contrast to what was happening a few years back, because most people are realizing this economy is in bad shape and the spending is out of control and the intrusion of our civil liberties is out of control. These endless wars keep going on. So I think that's what they're responding to. And most of the young people say, well, we like somebody to believe in something. We like it because you stick to your guns and you have high regard for the Constitution.
You've brought some issues into this campaign that others haven't touched for years. Along with Herman Cain, you've tackled the gold standard. I know you're really getting a kick out of that being back in the conversation, sometimes on the front page of newspapers. Mission accomplished, if you will, from that standpoint?
Now, we have a long way to go because those who cling to the power to create money out of thin air, which is the establishment, the banking establishment, the political establishment, control over money has always been the thing that has brought great nations down, whether it was 500 years ago or 2,000 years ago. It's the control of money. And the founders understood this and tried to prevent us from getting into this trouble, and said that nothing other than gold and silver could be legal tender, and that you could not have a central bank and you could not print money. And of course, Jefferson was on the side of the argument that I'm on, and yet here we are. We're doing exactly what they tried to prevent. And this is also the reason we're facing this horrendous crisis of runaway debt and runaway spending, and also on the verge of a much bigger crisis because you just can't keep printing money when you need it. And this is what we're doing. We're not only doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for the entire world. And Bernanke has indicated that he'll be on the standby if Europe needs bailed out. Those banks that are holding that Greek debt, if it's necessary, he'll step in with the U.S. dollar. But there's always a limit, and I think we're getting pretty close to that limit right now.
Many Palin supporters and many other conservatives like you a lot. Others don't. And then there's that group, a big group, that I seem to run into all the time. They say, yeah, I like Ron Paul on almost everything. He's all about liberty, Constitution. But while I agree with him on fiscal matters and many social issues, I just can't get behind his foreign policy. They say you're soft on Iran, bad for Israel, and they say you give a voice to 9/11 conspiracy groups. Are they right? And are these legit concerns, or have you been mischaracterized on these issues?
Well, I mean, I know what my position is, and some of them are confused about it because they sometimes will use a term like isolationist, and I'm definitely not an isolationist because the people who oppose what I'm saying are usually the one that wants to put on sanctions. And the founders were very adamant. They said that we should be have as much friendship and trade with people as possible, and that we'd be less likely to fight wars with them. And certainly this has proven the point. I mean, if we could talk and trade with Red China when they were killing hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of their own people, the same way with the Soviets, we were an ally of the Soviets, and finally their systems broke down. So I'm only following the Constitution and what the founders advised. I believe in a very strong national defense. But what I don't understand from the conservatives that might criticize my position is why aren't they conservative on military spending? It seems like every penny is okay no matter what it's being spent for, and they're not opposed to foreign aid. Anybody who wants foreign aid, you can give them foreign aid. If Obama wants to invade Libya and get involved in Libya and Syria and all these without congressional approval, that doesn't even sound conservative to me. Conservative means that you are cautious, you follow the law, you follow the Constitution. If you have to go to war, you declare the war and you fight it and you win it. But now for this last decade, there's nothing conservative about our policy. We've been fighting these wars, and there was, for Iraq, there were no Al-Qaeda there. The Al-Qaeda is in Iraq now, and it has added $4 trillion to our debt. So any conservatives who say, well, any military spending is okay, it doesn't matter because that's not economic. It's absolutely economic. All great nations come down because of overextending themselves overseas. Fortunately, we didn't have to fight the Soviets because they bankrupted themselves, and we're about to do the same thing. So what I don't understand is why conservatives can't be a little more conservative when they talk about military spending. Besides, I think just spending money on our presence around the world diminishes our national defense, and I could go into a lot of detail, but we probably don't have time. I think this really hurts Israel. We undermine Israel. We take away their sovereignty. They can't do anything without our permission. They can't have peace treaties. They can't defend their borders. And then we prop up people like Mubarak in Egypt, and finally the radicals take over and throw them out. And now, as well as in Libya, the radical Muslims are in control there now, and they're unfriendly to Israel. So I don't understand that position. So where you can't be more discreet about how you spend this money and how you get involved. I think we ought to follow the law of the land, which is the Constitution.
You have supporters from all walks of life. Those looking to legalize marijuana are often in the Ron Paul movement. What is your stance on pot use?
Yeah, I want to legalize freedom. I want to legalize freedom of choice. But the same argument I make for, medicinal marijuana is the same one that I make to people because I mock what they do. I say that they have a right to drink raw milk too. it's the same principle. The government tells us what we can put into our bodies. Not only do they deal with the drugs, but they deal with every other thing that we do with our lives and our bodies and our civil liberties. So it's all one principle to me. Now, I really preach the gospel against the drug usage, but I also point out there's more drug addiction against prescription drugs. So the whole thing doesn't work. And we tried prohibition. It was a farce. It caused a lot of criminality. And right now, the drug war is causing, a lot of problems on our borders. We're over there, we're worrying about Syria, and that's a serious problem, but we're getting involved in that civil war because there have been several hundred, maybe 1,000 or 2 have been killed. 50,000 have been killed on the Mexican border, and it's not even in the news, and all it has to do with this drug war, prevents nothing, and all it does is create this criminality. So I think the war on drugs is a total failure, both from a political and a medical viewpoint. We don't treat alcoholics by putting them in prison. It's a disease, and drug addiction should be treated as a disease rather than a criminal act where we put them in prison and all we do is harden these criminals. So one of these days the American people will wake up and say the conservative position is not to spend trillions of dollars on this war on drugs because it absolutely doesn't work and we don't have any money left to keep doing this.
Dr. Paul, I think you're one of the very few who can really relate to Governor Palin from the aspect of press coverage and attacks from others. Do you feel you get treated unfairly in your race for the White House? We know Palin has been treated unfairly, and many say you have as well.
Oh, yeah. I guess everybody at times will claim that, but I think the supporters I have complain more about exclusion than, direct attacks and innuendos and all these things. But I think it's been more of the exclusion. They have documented so many times when they all talk about, the campaign, and they might list 3 candidates. They won't even put my name down. And sometimes when there's an election, if I'm in second place, they'll talk about first place and third place, and they won't mention my name. So it's sort of funny, but it's also very aggravating to the people who work so hard to try to give us credibility.
Governor Palin endorsed and supported your son Rand Paul in his race in Kentucky. That was a successful outcome, so there's that connection here. And speaking of support, if you do not get the nomination, could you and your supporters get behind a Santorum or a Gingrich or a Romney? I know Paul's supporters are a lot like Palin supporters, very, very loyal to the point that many just won't settle for anyone else.
Well, it's hard to figure because right now they don't even want to talk about that because they want to keep working hard and see if we can break through because we are doing well in collection of the delegates. And we know that the candidate's been up and down. Santorum is up right now, but that doesn't mean next week it'll be something different. And even Romney's had some rough sailing here lately. So what we'll do, one thing I know is I don't control even the supporters. I might make suggestions, but they're very independent-minded. But they wouldn't want to support a candidate that doesn't agree with us on anything. That doesn't make any sense. So that remains to be seen because we're going to concentrate on just doing our very best in all these primaries.
Congressman Paul, thanks so much for joining us today, and good luck to you the rest of the way.
Thanks a lot. Good to be with you.
Ron Paul here on the Palin Update. And the race for the GOP nod continues to be a battle between the congressmen, as well as Newt Gingrich, Rick Santorum, and Mitt Romney. But will the eventual nominee definitely be one of these 4 men? This past week, some speculation about a brokered convention grabbed the headlines. Folks wondering if this race is still up in the air come convention time. Could a brokered convention happen? And if so, would, say, Sarah Palin be interested in the chance to run against Obama? Well, the governor was asked just that by Eric Bolling on the Fox Business Network.
Months from now, if that's the case, then, all bets are off as to who it will be willing to offer themselves up in the name of service to their country. I would do whatever I could to help.
Those comments were met with flat-out glee by many Palinistas, still holding out hope for that open door and a long-shot Palin run this year. Now, one thing we know, Sarah Palin can draw a crowd, and she can really rev up supporters. CPAC 2012 was a smashing success, and Governor Palin's keynote speech the highlight of the big weekend. In a crowded ballroom, the governor sent onlookers into a frenzy.
And our movement, it is bigger than one person. It is bigger than one candidate. It is bigger than one party. It's about one country united under God. We aren't red Americans. We're not blue Americans. We're red, white, and blue. And President Obama, we are through with you.
Multiple rooms had to be opened up to accommodate the crowds to see Palin. You can check out the governor's entire speech at saranet.net. I want to thank all the folks at CPAC for their hospitality toward Saranet Radio. We had a wonderful time. Special thanks to Herman Cain, Congressman Steve King, Chuck Woolery, and all the great candidates we met that are running for office this year. Also, we must point out what a great job security, police, and volunteers did throughout the event. Governor Palin took to Facebook again this past week, this time to defend a left-wing liberal, Professor Alan Dershowitz. Palin says the Harvard prof is right when it comes to Media Matters. In answering a recent attack by Max Blumenthal, formerly of Media Matters, Dershowitz says Blumenthal and Media Matters will be single-handedly responsible for Obama losing this election. Palin commends Dershowitz for calling them out, pointing to Media Matters' continued use of anti-Semitic slurs, unethical work, and bullying tactics. Strange bedfellows? Maybe. But Palin again proving she fights for what's right, no matter someone's political affiliation. A spokesperson for Sarah Pack is blasting the new HBO film Game Change that claims to be a documentation of the 2008 campaign, but really turns out to be a lot of fiction. The Palin aide says they call it a docudrama, but there is little docu in it. HBO must add a disclaimer that this movie is fiction. Probably what we'd expect from Hollywood, another hit job. Governor Palin responded to this movie as well. She made many an appearance on the talk shows this past week, and on Fox News Sunday she broke out that great Palin humor and charm, saying, quote, "I think we're going to call that a Sarah Palin Employment Act, and you guys need to thank me for employing more people, probably in their imitations of Sarah Palin, than the president has put Americans to work," unquote. Well, last year we had a great time participating in the historic Grizzly Fest, that online summit of Palin supporters. Now the great group behind Grizzly Fest is back, and this time with the Grizzly Fest Online Winter Summit set for February 25th. The focus of the Winter Fest, sudden and relentless reform. Panelists will address reform, crony capitalism, and much more. Mark your calendars, Saturday, February 25th. And for a complete rundown of the day's events, just go to grizzlyfest.com. You can also follow on Twitter at GrizzlyFest. We are going to be a part of this great event again and can't wait. The Palin movement continues. Now, we know Sarah Palin drives liberals nuts, but have you heard the governor has linsanity? That's right, Governor Palin has admitted she's following the unbelievable breakout rookie season of New York Knicks star Jeremy Lin. The Harvard product has come out of nowhere to shock the NBA, scoring in record fashion and suddenly making basketball at Madison Square Garden matter once again. After CPAC, Palin spent the week in the Big Apple doing lots of Fox hits, and along the way she got herself a new Linsanity t-shirt. The Gov says Jeremy Lin is everything America stands for, calling him an American story, uplifting, positive, and someone who unifies our country. Jeremy Lin, Palin, makes sense, gotta love it, although I'm sticking with the Bulls. Well, that'll just about do it for this edition of the Palin Update on Saranet Radio. Visit saranetradio.net for continuing coverage of Governor Palin. Also follow us on Twitter at Saranet Radio, and we are now on Facebook, so please like Saranet Radio on Facebook. I want to thank everyone here at Saranet Radio. Thanks to Congressman Ron Paul, and thank you for listening today. Please be sure to join us again next time for another edition of the Palin Update. I'm Kevin Scholla. Have a pleasant day.